Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. Although only a 4-day week, we have been very busy this week preparing the Alexas to go out to our members who've requested them. This is so they're able to access our Site for Wight skill and listen to the Talking News newsletter, information about the team, the trustees, Site for Wight notices and iWasp scams by simply asking Alexa to enable the Site for Wight skill. And today we have also started to test the skill which is going out on the Google. This will be out on Google Podcast and we hope to launch it within the next week. Finally, the same information can also be heard through the telephone on our telephone service by dialing 01983 475547. All three services are free to members, but do be aware that if you're using the telephone service, you need to cut the call off after 59 minutes to avoid charges on certain tariffs. We've also been out in the square this week. As it is National Volunteers Week this week, we are saying thank you to each and every one of our 104 volunteers who have offered their time to us. Obviously, during the last 12 months, this has been limited due to services having to cease, but we are looking forward to welcoming them each and every one back on the 30th of June here at Millbrook House. This, of course, is timed with our planned reopening on the 1st of July for Wednesday and Thursday activities here at Millbrook. If you need any further information, never hesitate to give us a call here at the office on Isle of Wight 522205. And finally, we are looking forward to welcoming Amy, who starts next week as our apprentice at our Dress for Less shop in Newport. We are very much looking forward to welcoming Amy into the team, which is Debbie, the retail shop manager, and her 23 volunteers who all together run Dress for Less for us, raising vital funds for the charity. Please everybody stay safe and let's see what the announcement on the 14th of June brings. Thank you, Lisa.
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from Island Echo, headlined Rule Britannia, extra 4-day bank holiday announced for Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Residents and tourists on the Isle of Wight will be able to take advantage of an extra 4-day bank holiday next year to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Buckingham Palace has confirmed the dates for the extra bank holiday, which will celebrate the 70-year reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, a milestone that no British king or queen has ever reached. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said that the extra holiday will provide an opportunity for communities and people to come together and celebrate the historic event. The Queen and other members of the royal family will tour the country close to the time and undertake a number of special engagements, with celebrations including a special party and a concert at the palace, alongside a derby at Epsom Racecourse. On the island, it's expected that a number of events will be held, similar to those that took place at the Queen's Diamond Jubilee in 2012. Buckingham Palace said, "An extended bank holiday will provide an opportunity for communities and people throughout the United Kingdom to come together to celebrate this historic milestone. The 4 days of celebrations will include public events and community activities, as well as national moments of reflection on the Queen's 70 years of service. The bank holiday will take place between Thursday 2nd of June and Sunday 5th of June 2022. Hi everyone, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined At Death's Door. Former Island Line carriages could be scrapped if no buyer is found. Former London Underground trains that have recently retired from service on the Isle of Wight could be scrapped in the next 5 weeks unless a buyer is found for them, according to their current seller. Several carriages from the 1938 tube stock, which was removed from the island's railway network as part of a multi-million-pound upgrade plan, have been found worthy homes on the island, including 2 carriages that have been rehomed at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. Others have been listed on eBay, as previously reported by Island Echo. The latest news regarding the trains comes from the online seller named Marcus, who bought 3 of the 80-year-old carriages for £32,000 following the news of their retirement and listed them on the online auction site. He says he's in a race against time to find a new home for the historic fleet due to having no space to store them. The carriages, which are currently being stored at a scrapyard, are facing death row should no buyer come forward. Marcus has revealed that the yard is under instruction to have them destroyed should they remain there beyond a further 5 weeks. Potential new owners are able to buy and remove the carriages, which had sat idle on the island for several years and been used for parts in their current poor state, or have them restored by trained specialists recommended by Marcus.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. MP puts forward ideas to improve dentistry services on the Isle of Wight. Following the publication of a report by Health Watch England this week, Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley has spoken in Parliament about the issues islanders face with trying to access NHS dentistry services. In a Westminster Hall debate on Tuesday, 25th of May, Mr Seeley highlighted to Dentistry Minister Joe Churchill the struggles that some islanders have been facing with trying to access an NHS dentist. He said, "Some islanders who are getting a new dentist are now having to go to the mainland for treatment. That is incredibly inconvenient, especially given that with the most expensive ferries in the world, some kids on the island have never seen a dentist in their life." Bob said the problems seem to be exacerbated in coastal, rural and isolated areas such as the Isle of Wight, with the nearest dental school to the Isle of Wight in Portsmouth not producing enough dentists. He explained to the minister there was a further problem on the island with dentists leaving the island or retiring. Recognising there was no easy fix, Mr Seeley suggested some potentially quick wins that could help ease the problem. His suggestions included the initiation of a dental training scheme on the island, the need to simplify the process for qualifying as a training practice, and a boost to the funding for the salary of interns. He also stressed that changes to contracts to incentivise dentists to remain in the NHS was important, as was the separation of laboratory fees from dental fees to help laboratories survive. Speaking after the debate, Mr Seeley said, "There is no easy solution to the problem. I understand that, but I want to work with the government to see what can be done to ease problems here on the island. I know that the Minister is receptive to new ideas, and I will continue to engage in further conversations with her to see what can practically be done."
Isle of Wight figures as UK records no coronavirus-related deaths. From Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. As the UK records no new daily coronavirus-related deaths for the first time since the pandemic started, just 2 cases have been registered on the Isle of Wight. The island's rolling rate per 100,000 remains below the national average at 17.6. It has risen slightly, though. In the 7 days to May the 27th, it has increased from 13.4. Since March 2020, there have been 6,861 cases on the Isle of Wight. Meanwhile, nationally, 3,165 new cases were recorded in the last 24-hour period, according to government data. There have been no new deaths linked to the virus for the first time since the pandemic started. Calls are growing from some experts for the government to delay the lifting of lockdown restrictions in England later this month. Professor Ravi Gupta, a member of the new and emerging respiratory virus threats advisory group, said that a further easing of measures on June the 21st was a bit early. Lockdown easing's already been paused for millions of people in central Scotland. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's announced a slight slowing down in the lifting of restrictions because of rising coronavirus cases.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Strictly Star announces last chance to nominate Isle of Wight for major awards. Strictly Come Dancing's head judge, Shirley Ballas, is offering people and projects from the Isle of Wight the chance to waltz off with a National Lottery award by getting their nominations in before the 7th of June deadline. The National Lottery Awards are the annual search for the UK's favourite National Lottery funded people and organisations, and they celebrate the inspirational individuals and groups who do extraordinary things in their community especially during these challenging times. Last year, there were almost 5,000 nominations made, and once again, the National Lottery is looking to hear about those who are going the extra mile, doing amazing things and inspiring others. Anyone who has received National Lottery funding is eligible for nomination. Winners in each category will receive a £3,000 cash prize for their organisation and a coveted National Lottery Awards trophy. In 2018, Shirley surprised the winners of the Health Project category with their National Lottery Award. Breast Cancer Care's support app, BECCA, Becca, helps people move forward after breast cancer, and Shirley presented the trophy to a group of women in Glasgow who use the app. The project was close to Shirley's heart as she had gone through a cancer scare herself around the same time. Shirley said, "In 2018, I was fortunate enough to visit a National Lottery funded project and see firsthand where funding goes and how valuable it is to those in the community. It's thanks to National Lottery players that £30 million is raised for good causes every week. The last 14 months have been extremely tough on us all, but as we hope for better days ahead, we are constantly astounded by the way people and projects responded to adversity with heroic yet simple acts of love, kindness and selflessness that will be long remembered. I have been fortunate to witness how hard these local heroes work and how deserving they are of these awards and accolades. They should be celebrated and will only be celebrated if you put them forward, so please get nominating." Encompassing all aspects of National Lottery Good Causes funding, the 2021 National Lottery Awards are seeking to recognise outstanding individuals in the following sectors: culture, arts and film, heritage, sport, community/charity. There will be a special Young Hero Award for someone under the age of 18 who has gone that extra mile in their organisation. All nominees must work or act for a National Lottery funded organisation or have received National Lottery funding. Winners of these categories will be chosen by a judging panel made up of members of the National Lottery family and partners. In addition, projects from any sector that have received National Lottery funding are eligible to enter the National Lottery Project of the Year category. 16 shortlisted finalists will compete in a UK-wide public vote in September to claim this title. To make your nomination for this year's National Lottery Awards, tweet @Lotto Good Causes with your suggestions or complete an entry form through the website www.lotterygoodcauses.org.uk/awards. Entries must be received by midnight on the 7th of June 2021.
This is Brian reading an article from On the Wight. 30 years of red squirrel work on the Isle of Wight being turned into a book. Helen Butler, MBE, from the Wight Squirrel Project, started compiling 30 years of work with red squirrels during the first lockdown. Writing up 30 years of red squirrel work on the Isle of Wight was the task Helen Butler, MBE, set herself during lockdown. Helen said, "There is so much information, it was a nightmare trying to work out how to present it. In the end, it had to be split into 3 parts and then into sections and chapters. The introductory part 1 is now ready to download from Wight Squirrel Project website. Part 2 is all about data and past surveys and research, including sightings sent in by the general public, plus biannual woodland monitoring carried out by dedicated volunteers. It is over 200 pages of A4, and Helen aims to get it finished by the end of the year. Part 3 is about mortality and morbidity, and not for anyone with a weak stomach. Technical hurdles. Work has slowed as lockdown lifted and other jobs come in. A corrupted hard drive on the PC that needed replacing, and a laptop that ground to a halt didn't help either. Helen said, "Pulling all this data together has needed help from experts in QGIS, mapmaking, and Excel. I'm really grateful to anyone who's given advice and time. The finished publication will be useful as a reference for anyone taking on red squirrel work on the Isle of Wight. Share your sightings. The general public play an important role in red squirrel conservation, so please keep your sightings coming. You can email whitesquirrels@hotmail.com, ring 01983 611 or go to the website and download the app or use the online form."
Plans for Ryde's Brewery, soon to be former base. From Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. As building work gets underway at its new site at Branston Farm, changes are being proposed to the original base of Goodard's Brewery in Ryde. In the first stages of the Isle of Wight Council's plans for a rural business park near Newchurch, the island's popular craft beer producers were given the green light for a new purpose-built brewery and bottling facility. Permission was granted earlier this year for the facility, 42 affordable houses and 18 offices to be built on the former Branston Farm Education Centre in a £2.4 million scheme which is now underway. Having outgrown its former base on Bullen Road near the Westridge Golf Centre, brewers are now seeking to turn the redundant bottling hall and brewery office into a 2-bed cottage. The applicants of the application, the Goddards, restored the derelict set of buildings to become ancillary buildings to the brewery, but these will be redundant early next year. Planning documents submitted in favour of the change of use said common sense suggests, backed up by experience, that there is little demand for office use at this location, and so the house is being sought. To view the plans, you can visit the Council's planning register. Comments will be accepted until June the 25th. As part of the plans for the new site in Newchurch, the new barn-style brewery will have a visitors' experience centre, new office, retail and storage space with hop fields. A bar and a restaurant at the first floor level is also included in the plans, overlooking the brewing hall.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. The curtain lifts. Island Theatre gets back on stage. The Isle of Wight amateur dramatics are back in business as coronavirus restrictions lift, with preparations for performances beginning to be made by several island theatres. The Apollo Theatre players, based at the Apollo Theatre in Pyle Street, Newport, have been gearing up for the restart of the delayed theatre season by starting rehearsals for A London Affair, which is set to take place in July. A London Affair consists of 3 plays: Marble Arch, Lunch Hour and Knightsbridge, by the creator of the well-known character Horace Rumpole and former barrister the late John Mortimer. Marble Arch is the story of an ageing film star who believes that her rich lover has died in her bathroom, and it's up to her to dispose of the body. Lunch Hour tells the story of a man and a woman who attempt to have an affair during their lunch hour, but are continually interrupted. Knightsbridge deals with the misunderstandings and confusion that arise when Francesca's fiancé discovers that her mother has been putting up a number of dubious advertisements around Knightsbridge. What can she mean by "ladies, double-fronted chess. Performances will be held between the 2nd and 10th of July, and booking will be available from the 21st of June via the theatre's website. Also heading to the Apollo is Graham Putney's visiting show After All These Years on the 16th and 17th of July. Elsewhere on the island, Bembridge Little Theatre Company will host Full Circle, a comedy by Janet Shaw. Only 30 seats are available for these performances between the 25th of June and the 27th of June. The Bembridge Stage Stars will also play host to A Bard in the Hand, written by Maureen Sullivan. Curtain up for the Shakespeare-themed pantomime will be on the 12th of August, with subsequent performances held on the 13th and 14th of August. Find out more and book tickets for both via Bembridge Little Theatre Club's Facebook page.
Hello, this is Steve, reading a story from, yes, you've guessed it, the Island Echo, headlined World War II fighter plane round detonated by bomb disposal in Seaview. The discovery of a 20mm round from a World War II fighter plane prompted a call-out for the Royal Navy bomb disposal team on Sunday. Police were alerted to the discovery in Seaview, near Ryde, when a member of the public found the piece of ordnance on the beach. Unwisely, the individual moved the object from its original location, but did the right thing in alerting the authorities. Bomb disposal experts from Portsmouth attended the scene and confirmed that the item was still live, more than 75 years after the war. The decision was taken to detonate the round by means of a controlled explosion, which was carried out in a nearby field.
Drifting yacht rescued in early morning Yarmouth and Lymington RLNI operation. From Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. A busy weekend for lifeboat volunteers at Yarmouth continued early on Monday morning after a yacht was spotted drifting off the Needles. Yarmouth Severn class all-weather lifeboat Eric and Susan Hiscock Wanderer was tasked to launch by HM Coast Guard on Monday the 31st of May at 7:10 in the morning to a boat that had been spotted drifting off the Needles. HM Coast Guard had also received reports from a dog walker that a yacht had been seen drifting in the Needles Channel. The lifeboat's crew located a 40-foot sailing yacht which had run aground on the Shingle Bank, 2 nautical miles southwest of Hurst Point. In order to get close enough to access the situation, the lifeboat's smaller Y boat was deployed with 2 RNLI crew members on board. There were no visible signs of damage or water ingress, and none of the yacht's crew were injured. As the tide was still ebbing, the conditions were calm. Yarmouth RNLI decided to return to harbour as it would be several hours before the casualty could be refloated. Yarmouth's RNLI Severn class lifeboat relaunched at 9:20am and returned to the casualty's position so they could stand by ready to ensure the boat would refloat safely. As the tide started to rise, it remained too shallow for the all-weather lifeboat to manoeuvre too close to the Shingle Bank. The Y-boat was launched with the intention of attempting to tow the boat of the casualty around. After several unsuccessful attempts, Yarmouth's lifeboat's coxswain took the decision to call for assistance from Lymington's RNLI inshore lifeboat. Even though the tide was rising, the yacht was struggling to refloat and needed assistance to be pulled clear of the shingle. Lymington RNLI's Bees-class boat was eventually able to tow the casualty clear, and the boat was refloated at 12:20, more than 5 hours after going aground. Having been refloated, the yacht and her crew made the decision to continue with their planned voyage. Yarmouth RNLI's coxswain, Howard Lester, said it is important when planning a passage to take account of the weather forecast, tides and navigational hazards. Yarmouth lifeboat returned to her berth and was ready for service at 12:46pm.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight's Vestas manufacturing blades for major UK project. The Isle of Wight's Vestas is playing its part in helping to create Scotland's largest offshore wind farm. The firm's Newport base is producing wind turbine blades which will then be painted and finished at the Fawley's former power plant, Vestas' new painting and logistics facility. 99 of the 114 V164 blades will be manufactured by the company for the Sea Green offshore wind project. No new jobs have been directly created as a result of the project, but it is responsible for helping to maintain the employment of 700 Isle of Wight staff. When complete, the wind farm will be Scotland's largest and deepest. The project is a £3 billion joint venture project between Total Energies, 51%, and SSE Renewables, 49%. Paul Cooley, Director of Capital Projects at SSE Renewables, said, "This announcement is yet another example of how SSE Renewables and our partners Total Energies are working together with our supply chain to support the green recovery and create tangible opportunities through our Sea Green project for people across the UK. The production in the Isle of Wight of turbine blades for Sea Green means that our construction activities on what will become Scotland's largest offshore wind farm is delivering a real green boost for UK jobs. The 1,075 megawatt Sea Green project is currently under construction and is located 27 kilometres off the coast of Scotland in the North Sea's Firth of Forth. First power is expected by early 2022, with the offshore wind farm expected to enter commercial operation in 2022-23.
This is Chris reading an article from On the Wight. Guy smashes around the Isle of Wight kitesurfing record. Blink and you would have missed him because last month Guy Bridge kitesurfed around the island in less time than it takes to watch the film Avatar. Congratulations are in order for Guy Bridge, who last month set a new Isle of Wight kitesurfing record. Blink and you would have missed him because on the 11th of May, Guy made his way around the island in just 2 hours, 24 minutes and 32 seconds, shaving off 7 minutes and 33 seconds from the previous record. That's covering a whopping distance of 62 miles, with an average speed of 26 miles per hour and maximum speed of 38 miles per hour, in less time than it takes to watch the film Avatar. After the event, Guy said, "It was super tough. The weather was hard to read and I lost 15 minutes in a big hole, but I was able to beat my old record."
High praise for Isle of Wight's Shared Lives scheme in first CQC inspection. From On the Wight, Iona. A scheme supporting carers who use their homes to look after vulnerable adults has been rated good in its first Care Quality Commission inspection since launching. Shared Lives was inspected in April and was given a good rating by inspectors. Launched in 2018, the initiative helps people with learning or physical disabilities, autism, a sensory impairment or mental health condition to live independently in their community. In the report, inspectors said people told us they were happy living with their shared lives homes and felt supported to live their lives in the way they wished to do so. Shared Lives carers spoke about people with kindness and compassion. The service was rated good in all 5 key areas of care: safe, effective, caring, responsive and well-led, as well as good overall. Inspectors found appropriate systems were in place to protect people from the risk of harm or abuse. Shared Lives carers were also recruited safely and had received appropriate training and support. There were sufficient staff to support people's needs. Safe systems were in place should people require support with medicines. Safe procedures were put in place to prevent and control the risk of infections, including coronavirus. People's independence was central to the support provided. People, Shared Lives carers and senior support workers all felt the service was well managed. Welcoming the findings, Councillor Carl Love, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, said all those involved in the scheme should be very proud. He said when the council introduced the Shared Lives service under the department's Care Close to Home strategy, it was because it wanted to provide more options for people to be able to live full lives as members of their communities in a home that they could call their own, with the care and support they need. Shared Lives carers, as this inspection by CQC reveals, have been helping people to achieve that ideal. They support adults with learning disabilities to live with them as part of their family, and they are all doing really well, according to the CQC. Equally, the report reveals just how well the Council's Shared Lives small team of officers is supporting the recruitment, training and support of Shared Lives carers. We look forward to future successes as they move forward in a changing world.
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo news website, headlined Islanders receiving tax credits warned of potential scams. Isle of Wight recipients of tax credits should be vigilant and alert to potential scams, HMRC has warned, as the remaining annual renewal packs will arrive in the post this week. In the 12 months to 30th of April 2021, HMRC responded to more than 1,154,300 referrals of suspicious contact from the public. More than 576,960 of these offered bogus tax rebates. In the same period, HMRC has worked with telecoms companies and Ofcom to remove more than 3,000 malicious telephone numbers and with internet service providers to take down over 15,700 malicious web pages. HMRC responded to 443,033 reports of phone scams in total, up 135% on the previous year. Anyone doing their tax credits renewal who has received a tax or benefits scam email or text might be tricked into thinking it was from HMRC and share their personal details with the criminals or even transfer money for a bogus overpayment. HMRC Cybersecurity Operations identifies and closes down scams every day. The department has pioneered the use in government of technical controls to stop its helpline numbers from being spoofed, so that fraudsters can no longer make it appear that they are calling from those HMRC numbers. Myrtle Lloyd, HMRC's Director General for Customer Services, said, "We are urging all of our customers to be really careful if they are contacted out of the blue by someone asking for money or bank details. There are a lot of scams out there where fraudsters are calling, texting or emailing customers claiming to be from HMRC. If you have any doubts, we suggest you don't reply directly and contact us yourself straight away. Search gov.uk for our scams checklist to find out how to report tax scams." Many scams mimic government messages to appear authentic and reassuring. HMRC is a familiar brand, which criminals abuse to add credibility to their scams. If customers cannot verify the identity of a caller, HMRC recommends that you do not speak to them. Customers can check gov.uk for HMRC's scams checklist to find out how to report tax scams and for information on how to recognise genuine HMRC contact. Tax credits help working families with targeted financial support, so it is important that people don't miss out on money they are entitled to. Customers have until 31st of July to notify HMRC of any change in circumstances that could affect their claims. Renewing online is quick and easy. Customers can log into gov.uk to check on the progress of their renewal, be reassured it is being processed, and know when they will hear back from HMRC. Customers can also use the HMRC app on their smartphone to renew their tax credits, check their tax credits payment schedule, and find out how much they have earned for the year. Tax credits customers must report the changes to HMRC. Circumstances that could affect tax credit payments include changes to living arrangements, childcare, working hours, or income, an increase or a decrease. Customers do not need to report any temporary falls in their working hours as a result of coronavirus. They will be treated as if they are working their normal hours until the coronavirus job retention scheme closes.
This is Chris reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Chillerton and Rookley Primary School closure, plans shelved. Controversial plans to merge Chillerton and Rookley Primary School and Godshill Primary School have been shelved for the time being. Newly elected councillor in charge of education, Councillor Debbie Andre, says no immediate decision will be made over the future of the schools. It means both sites will remain as they are ahead of the new school year in September 2021. Councillor Andre, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Skills, said, As the newly elected leadership of this council, it is only right and proper that we look at all the issues we have inherited from the previous administration, including the future of Chillerton and Rookley Primary School and Godshill Primary School. We take this endeavour very seriously and want to carefully consider all options before deciding the next steps. There will therefore be no immediate decision. That means the current situation of having two separate schools will remain in place for September 21. A consultation was launched to explore the possibility of closing the site and merging it with Godshill Primary. At the time, the Stenbury Federation, which runs Chillerton and Rookley, blamed a lack of pupils and a budget deficit. But some parents say the Federation forced pupils away by moving the preschool. They claim if it was invested in, it would attract more students. Campaign group Save Our School wants the school to remain and had put forward plans for a flexi school. This would see pupils spend half their time learning there and the other at home.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Community Bus Partnership volunteers given the Queen's Award. Isle of Wight volunteers have been honoured with the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, the highest award a voluntary group can receive in the UK. Established in 2011, the Isle of Wight Community Bus Partnership provides essential bus services to areas across the Isle of Wight, using vehicles from Southern Vectis and volunteer drivers. Southern Vectis General Manager Richard Tilsley said, "These services are absolutely vital to those who may otherwise find it difficult to travel across the island, with 93% of passengers on routes 22, 24 and 32 using concessionary passes. Every year, 33,000 journeys are taken on these three services, so we know how important they are to residents in Lake, Shanklin, Yaverland, Cowes, Gurnard and Northwood. Southern Vectis provides buses for the routes and will continue to do so thanks to support from the council and of course from the drivers who volunteer. Without them, none of this would be possible." The Isle of Wight Community Bus Partnership is one of 241 charities, social enterprises and voluntary groups to receive the prestigious award this year. The number of nominations remains high year on year, showing that the voluntary sector is thriving and full of innovative ideas to make life better for all those around them. The Queen's Award for Voluntary Service aims to recognise outstanding work by volunteer groups to benefit their local communities. It was created in 2002 to celebrate the Queen's Golden Jubilee. Recipients are announced each year on the 2nd of June, the anniversary of the Queen's coronation. Award winners this year are wonderfully diverse. They include volunteer groups from across the UK, including an inclusive tennis club in Lincolnshire, a children's bereavement charity in London, a support group for those living with dementia and their carers in North Yorkshire, a group supporting young people in Belfast, and a mountain rescue team in Powys. Representatives of the Isle of Wight Community Bus Partnership will receive the award crystal and certificate from Mrs. Susie Sheldon JP, Lord Lieutenant of the Isle of Wight, later this summer. Furthermore, 2 volunteers from the partnership will attend a garden party at Buckingham Palace in May 2022, depending on restrictions at the time, along with other recipients of this year's award. The Isle of Wight Community Bus Partnership is an excellent example of different organisations working with volunteers to make a huge difference to those living within the local area added Richard Tilsley. Without these buses and volunteer drivers, a significant number of vulnerable people would find it difficult to get out and about. It is vital for social inclusion that we all continue to support this initiative. All those who work tirelessly to provide this wonderful service thoroughly deserve this recognition. Ian Ward, BEM, a founding member of the project and the managing director of the partnership, said, "The service has continued throughout the pandemic, maintaining a vital service for isolated residents, and many volunteers have also helped with delivering medications and shopping for those isolating, and their hard work is more than worthy of this recognition." Alan Stott added, "All involved with the Community Bus Partnership, including Richard and the team at Southern Vectis, as well as Stuart at the Isle of Wight Council, are delighted that the hard work, dedication and commitment of our volunteers have been recognised, and thanks to those that nominated the team for valuing the difference they make to people's lives. Thank you so much, as always. It really is much appreciated. Hope to see you both very soon."
Opposition in village against holiday property plans rising. From On the Wight. Iona. Residents in the village are concerned that noise issues will not be considered by the local authority and fear that the development will set a precedent for more of the same. Residents have slammed plans to add more unsympathetic holiday properties in St Lawrence, worried it will turn the area into a holiday village. Proposals have been submitted to transform what planning agents say is an empty and dilapidated St Radigan's hotel on Undercliff Drive, turning the main 32-bed building into 2 houses, while adding 6 3-bed, 2-storey tourism units on land to the rear of the property. Owners, Turner Holiday Rentals, already own property in St Lawrence and submitted the plans following emergency repair work to the roof done last year. Planning agents Plan Research said the owners are now looking to further save the property, willing to invest to bring the eyesore site back to its original residential use. A consultation event with village residents drew suggestions to restore the main building to a hotel instead of building new properties. Despite considering the comments, plans have gone ahead to add the 6 holiday units behind existing properties on Spindlers Road, which would, in some cases, residents fear look straight into their already existing houses. Avril, who's lived in her house on Spindlers Road since the 1960s, said the site was not an eyesore, but it was a shame the development would spoil the beautiful village with so many people. Her son Nick, who grew up in the house, said the area was completely inappropriate for the development, with the houses literally the other side of their garden wall, with the quiet, peaceful environment broken. A concern repeatedly raised by residents of Spindlers Road is the noise disturbance derived from holiday properties, which they already experience from lets owned by Turner Holiday Rentals. In submitted planning documents, agents say the owners are planning to live in St Radigan's and would be on the site to deal with noise complaints quickly. Residents, however, are dubious that would happen. Susie, who's a shift worker in a care home, said fireworks have been set off by guests before, which has caused an issue. She said, "It makes no sense, no logic. We're feeling a little bullied. These are the smallest houses in the village, and if these are going to be built, they should be built for local families who need them. There is a shortage of affordable housing anyway." One young family in the village said the development feels like a given. They've heard talks of people already getting their homes valued and feel the Isle of Wight Council are not going to consider noise issues when determining the application, that council taxpayers are less important than tourists. They said, "We are worried it will set a precedent, it will lead the way for the developments in small villages on the island, which is more detrimental to tourism when you have a whole holiday village instead of integrated spaces. We would never have thought that when we were moving here there is a potential for that kind of development right on our doorstep." Another resident, whose property will potentially be the most affected should the development go ahead, has lived in their house since the 1950s and fear it'll be the start as Turner Holiday Rentals owns other land further down Seven Sisters Road. Other issues raised by residents is the development would cause more traffic issues, impact wildlife, and the planning documents are disingenuous in some areas. For example, claiming that St Radigan's was a hotel. They say the establishment was never really a hotel, but a Christian holiday centre that was only open during the summer, with fewer private vehicles compared to what has been said in the planning documents. With the landslip also closing Undercliff Drive from St Lawrence through to Knighton, one resident said while it may still be an A road, in name only, it's not fit for purpose, and it would increase traffic pressure on the chute into the village. To view the proposals, you can do so on the council's planning register, and comments will be accepted until the 14th of June.
Good morning, my name's Paul. This is the second part of the Talking News, and I'm going to start with letters to the editor.
And I'm Imelda, who's going to be assisting Paul.
Well, this is a letter from Nigel Hartley, Chief Executive Mountbatten. Why Mountbatten role is important. I am writing in response to Richard Spencer's letter published in the 28th of May. Mr. Spencer is right to mention now Mountbatten's model of care is working successfully. We see around 200% more islanders cared for than we did 3 years ago, and our mission is to never to ignore anyone who needs us. We have also worked to ensure Mountbatten's finances are as secure as possible to develop the services required for a growing number of people. A third of our income currently comes from the local NHS clinical commissioning groups. Hospices have never been fully funded by the NHS due to the fact that they grew up independently from the NHS. Dying was never part of the NHS vision, which was initially to make people better from the illnesses they had. Although we have worked hard to ensure that Mountbatten services for our island community are fit for purpose, in a world where we know that there will be continue for a significant increase in need, there is still more to be done. The NHS is set to change once again with the creation of Integrated Care Systems, ICSs. The Isle of Wight and Hampshire ICS is currently under development, and it is important Mountbatten has a significant place in discussions about future services so we protect our current NHS income, influence decisions and argue for increased funding as our services grow. Our Head of Innovation and Service Development is an existing role which has not been filled for the last couple of years, but we have been fortunate to find someone with the relevant experience and knowledge from within the NHS to ensure Mountbatten's place as part of the new ICS is secure. I will always make myself available to talk with anyone directly about Mountbatten and urge people to contact me on 01983 217 310 or by email at lowercase nigel.hartley@mountbatten.org.uk should there be any questions or issues.
And the second letter is from Joan Hall of Gurnard. How I sympathised with Sue Porteous. No one answering the phone anymore. Twice this week I've been knocked over with joy and amazement. Lloyd Bank in Newport. I got their answering machine. Almost immediately, a young lady returned my call. To say I was ecstatic and overwhelmed is an understatement. I explained my problem. I was given an appointment for the next day. Courteous, calm, kind. Last Thursday, Gurnard had a massive power cut at 3 p.m. Living on my own, I needed to know when it was going to go on again. I phoned the emergency number and it was answered immediately. I was so relieved. Being on the priority list, which the man on the phone knew from my details, he was concerned about my welfare. Nice. He told me they would send someone to the junction box by 4 p.m. He arrived at 4 p.m. They informed me the power would be back at 6 p.m, and it was. I also had text afterwards to see I had power and I was all right. So don't lose heart. I think times are changing.
This is the next letter, figures not quite what they seem, from George Yates at Binstead. Hopes high for more help for our island. County Press the 28th of the 5th. Sees a worried Bob Seeley cranking up his spin machine. Well, let's not deal with any of the bids yet to materialise. 50k substitute for surprise, not getting the promised island deal. Some second-hand underground trains when other areas in the UK get brand new state-of-the-art trains. 48 million for our NHS, but hang on 20%, 10 million is heading to the mainland. Delivering from the island, looking a bit sad, don't you think, Bob?
And this is from Alistair Pearce of Totland. Oh, the beautiful, beautiful irony. I believe it was Conservative Minister Matt Hancock who said, "Where the Isle of Wight leads, Britain follows." One can only hope so. Congratulations to the new alliance of Isle of Wight councillors and freedom from the Tory tyranny.
Is there a culture of secrecy? This is from Hans Bromwich in Cowes. Last month I had to formally chase an FOI request. I would like to put the following questions to the Isle of Wight NHS Trust Board. What is the reason for the trust culture of secrecy? Does the Isle of Wight Trust Board agree with me that an essential prerequisite for leadership at all levels within our NHS to be scrupulously open, honest, and not in any way to seek to mislead? And if so, does the Isle of Wight Trust Board meet those standards?
Where's the real picture, St Mary's? This is from Susan Weaver of Newport. Your story, Emergency Department hits National Health Service targets, is hardly surprising given every which way has been used to keep patients out of hospitals. As for the coming watchdog inspection, with hospitals empty of patients, I'm guessing every National Health Service target under the sun is being met in every hospital across the country. Never mind good. I'd be seriously worried if St Mary's isn't branded excellent. Perhaps the real picture ought to be the huge numbers of patients on National Health waiting lists currently denied timely treatment.
Opportunity missed. This is a letter from Phil Jelly at Ryde. I read with interest Mr Hunter's letter about the Whiteling catamaran service, County Press 28th to the 5th. It was nearly 8 years ago I first complained to Whiteling about poor connections between the catamarans and trains at Portsmouth Harbour, particularly London-bound trains. I joined a Whiteling passenger forum group and have attended every meeting over the years, constantly trying to get Whiteling to provide better connections, better service and more investment in this very important service. For foot passengers, it is the only service that has a step-free access from train to boat and boat to train and provides a vital link to the mainland for islanders as well as an important route to the island for visitors. Whiteling don't seem to see it that way, and I always come away from the meetings feeling they are really not interested in foot passengers and would rather not have us around. Then came along the £26 million investment in Island Line. A golden opportunity to get the catamaran times adjusted for better connections. Surely we could have a train every 30 minutes on the island, a train every 30 minutes to London, Waterloo, and the catamarans linking the two. This would require some investment by Whiteling in a third catamaran for the enormous potential of the route could finally be recognised. But no, Whiteling along with Southern West Railway have let this golden opportunity slip through their fingers. The Island Line contract allows for 2 trains to run a 30-minute service with much improved trains. To do this, the trains will need to pass each other halfway along the line, so a passing loop is built at Brading Station. This is 5 miles from Ryde Pier Head and 3.5 miles from Shanklin, hardly halfway. I decided to take my fight to Southern Western Railway through their Meet the Manager scheme. I was informed they would achieve a 30-minute timetable by tightening up the times between Brading and Ryde, and only allowing a 4-minute turnaround at Ryde Pier Head. Even SWR admitted it was very tight and not very robust in the event of late running, which there is bound to be, but said it was the best they could do. The golden opportunity to substantially increase passenger numbers on this very important route will be lost. Shame on both companies for wanting to make their money without providing the service. I would not support a road fixed link, but I wonder if the best answer would be a rail tunnel to link Ryde with Portsmouth.
Don't take on God in fight over council prayers. This is from Warwick Rust of Christchurch. I'm appalled to read of Councillor Brodie, the newly elected chairman of the Isle of Wight Council, and his decision to take it upon himself to abolish prayer before council meetings after a 16-year campaign to do so. Prayer may not change circumstances, but they certainly change people. I speak from experience. Councillor Brodie would do well to heed Lord Acton's dictum over 100 years ago that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. More recently, Robin Day in the BBC interview with the former Conservative Defence Minister Sir John Knott declared, "You are a transient politician, here today, gone tomorrow." If Councillor Brodie is unrepentant, he will be brought down by his own arrogance. Take on God in a fight, and you will lose.
This is a letter from Neil Clifford at Cowes. Improved visibility at White House Road Junction. There has been much talk about how to make the junction with Forest Road and White House Road safer after the tragic fatal accident and many incidents at this busy crossroads. Perhaps Iron Roads could start by cutting back all the overgrown foliage to improve visibility.
And this one is from John Baldry of Ventnor. The BBC run dozens of stations, many of them 24 hours a day, a vast output. They are now being pilloried for a mistake made over a quarter of a century ago. Martin Bashir's crime was not the interview Princess Diana wrote afterwards that she was happy with the interview. It was the deception used to gain access to Diana. Almost every government minister is now gunning for the BBC, citing this deception, not seeing the irony that this present government has used more deception and lies in the last 14 months than most governments do in a lifetime. They actually make the BBC and Martin Bashir look like saints. It's a sorry state of affairs when we cannot take as truth statements that our PM makes. If we cannot believe the holder of the highest office in the land, who can we believe? My money is on the BBC.
We now move to White memories. Vagrancies of shopping over the years. Shopping is not what it was. Whether that's a good thing is like beauty in the eye of the beholder. A glance at shops gone by might bring the subject into focus. On February 12, 1910, Mr. Vibert, a Newport grocer, arrived at his shop to open up. He found it full of gas fumes and opened the windows to clear the air. After a few minutes he lit a match. As you do, the resultant explosion nearly killed him. The county press reported when Mr. Vibert entered his shop at the corner of Lower St James Street on Wednesday morning, it was found that gas had been escaping from a chandelier and the doors were thrown open to get rid of the gas. However, when a match was lighted later on, Mr. Vibert was knocked over by the force of the explosion and was singed about the face and head. The explosion blew the plate glass panels out of the shop doors, pieces of glass being driven right across the street. Another lucky man was Ventnor grocer, Charles Gilbert. He was charged with selling unadulterated coffee. On March the 3rd, 1894, the county press reported, Sergeant Adams visited the defendant's shop and asked for £half a pound of coffee, with which he was served by a young girl. When the witness said it was purchased for analytical purposes, Gilbert said, "I can sell you coffee, but that is chicory and coffee." The public analyst certified that the sample contained 33% chicory. Gilbert pleaded the mistake occurred because the young girl was not being accustomed to the shop. It was a flimsy excuse from a miserable pleader, but it worked. The article continued, the chairman said the bench were willing to take a lenient view of the case, but he should be aware that he was answerable for the acts of his servant. Fined 5 shillings and 19 shillings costs, or 7 days. In Victorian and Edwardian times, ringing the changes was a common swindle. It meant tricking someone out of their cash by confusing them during a transaction. The county press reported in June 1896 that John Little was charged with a larceny of 30 shillings by means of ringing the changes. Inspector Coleman said Miss Dorr identified him as the man who had stolen 30 shillings from her about an hour previously by means of ringing the changes. Prisoner said, "Well, if there's any mistake, I will make it up to you sooner than have any bother." Witnesses charged him with the offence, and he replied, "I know I'm in the wrong," and said he would tell where the postal orders were. He said, "Excuse me," put his hand up to one side of his nose, gave a good strong blow, and out flew the 3 postal orders from his nostrils. Laughter in the court. Prisoner was remanded until Saturday. Meanwhile, one summer's day in 1905, a Mr. Scoville was walking past Hillier's, a cow's butcher's shop, when a lump of meat sailed through the air and landed on his Panama hat. Outraged, he took resort to law. Under the headlines, "A Stained Panama," the county press reported, William Scoville, a retired superintendent of H.M. Customs of Cows, sued H. Hillier, a cow's butcher, for £1 damage under somewhat amusing circumstances.
Plaintiff excitingly explained to the court that as he was passing the defendant's shop in St Mary's Road, Cows, in July, he was struck on the top of his new 30-shilling Panama hat by something which came out of the defendant's window. He looked inside and saw the defendant in a crouching position, which with the thing he flicks flies off the meat in his hand. And when he told the defendant to keep his hands to himself, the defendant laughed in his face. His hat was stained with blood, necessitating a special cleaning, which would cost 1 shilling. Defendant said he did not know that he hit plaintiff, but if he did so, it was accidental, and it had come to him and told him about it. Instead of sending him a lawyer's letter, he would have apologised and paid for the cleaning of the hat. The hat was produced, and His Honour, having inspected it, asked what was the matter with it. Plaintiff, there is nothing the matter with it now. His owners said it was perfect rubbish. When was it apparently an accident happened for an irate old gentleman to think that he had not been ribly injured and to incur legal costs? If he wanted to indulge in the law in such a matter, he must pay for it. He gave judgment for the defendant with costs. We will end with the thought of the late guest Brian Greening, friend and former contributor to these pages. Brian didn't like modern shops. Shopping, he said in one of his columns, is not what it was. The other day I was told to wait for assistance as I tried to purchase my single bottle of beer, because the machine didn't know whether I was 16 or 69. In none of the old shops was I reduced to telling a piece of metal to F off.
We now go to the article My View by Catherine James, Reciprocal Living with Our Dear Animal Friends. Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. So quipped Groucho Marx, or possibly Jim Brewer, depending on your sources. People who live alone been hit particularly hard by the pandemic, many possibly already struggling with social isolation. This understandably has led to a surge in pet ownership. Life is enhanced when shared with an additional heartbeat. This desire to have a furry friend is nothing new. Dogs have lived alongside us for millennia, supposedly descended from wolves, who, should they be able to operate the controls of a time machine without opposable thumbs, might be rather humiliated to arrive in 2021 and discover they are represented by portmanteau named mongrels such as the Labradoodle and Cockapoo, and imagine the canine ignominy if these ancient ancestors of dogs encountered a Shih Tzu poodle hybrid. While neurologists fluff up crossbreeds' genetic heritages and infantilists coo over fur babies, most pets can definitely be called commensals. Although this name is derived from the word for eating at the same table, I never want to see an animal licking off a dinner plate. We know where Fido's tongue has been. Nevertheless, domestic animals are in it for the mammoth. Proto-dogs ate carcasses left by early hunters. Nowadays, pampered pooches are indulged with vegan diets, hypoallergenic meals and grain-free kibbles. And in the ultimate commensal relationship, the Queen's corgis, Dachshund corgis, are served on their own curated menu. I have my own commensal, not a dog, not a cat, not even a mammal. I am the host for a rather impertinent jackdaw, which I have named Speckles, due to her freckly breast feathers. Recently a colleague returned to work after a year away from the office, channeling Lord Carnarvon. She creaked open her locker to reveal the lost treasure within, a box of out-of-date granola bars. "I'll have those," I offered, and that very evening I crumbled one onto my balcony. The next morning a biscuit had gone, replaced by 2 pieces of flattened clay reinforced with organic matter, maybe daub from an old building. Impressed in the surface were conspicuous beak marks. I put out further food, and more clay arrived, which I saved on my windowsills alongside the other fragments. I have observed Speckles steal a piece out of her stash, break it in two with her beak, and position one half on top of the other. There's a lump of chalk that, although flown up to me in my eyrie, she has subsequently taken against, regularly casting it off the balcony into the garden 4 floors below. Tormentingly, I bring it back only to find it discarded again a day or so later. While I gather and catalogue the gifts from my corvid commensal, she in return receives fat balls and peanuts and sups from my solar fountain. Maybe one day she'll bring in a shiny coin, like my 5p ghost, but that's another story.
And now we move on to public information. And this is the first County Press column by the new Isle of Wight Council leader, Laura P.C. Wilcox. Just over a week ago, I was elected to lead the Isle of Wight Council and formed an administration made up of 18 of the 21 non-Conservative councillors elected on May the 6th. Supported by the Liberal Democratic and Vectis Party members. In doing so, we have honoured the wishes of the electorate, 61% of whom voted for change from the previous Conservative administration. In coming together as the new Alliance Group, these councillors have made up the group are united in a shared aim to represent island residents and businesses and to put that ahead of any other consideration. This gives us the basis for a new political approach on the island, free of national party political considerations and the petty bickering and point securing that has seemed to be a key feature of council activity in recent years. Many of you have spoken with me about the ill-thought-through comments from the Conservatives. The public simply do not understand why they wish to attack and oppose us when we are putting the interests of the island and islanders first. Part of the work at the moment is to find out what has been going on under the previous administration. For much of the last 4 years, things were done behind closed doors, and there was little attempt to involve the community in council activity. This is going to change. Rather than just saying this is what is happening, we will make sure we explain things to people to let them know precisely what we are doing and why. I have around me a team of committed, hard-working councillors who have the skills, knowledge and expertise needed to get the island moving forward and to ensure we recover from the damage COVID has done to our lives, businesses and communities. There is no honeymoon period. We have hit the ground running. I will be telling you more in the coming months, and I promise to keep you informed as to the work of the new council through this column.
We now move on to What's On. Browse the gardens. 2 Seaview gardens will be opening their gates to the National Gardens Scheme on Sunday. Salterns Cottage and Red Cross Cottage will open their gardens from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at a cost of £5 a ticket to cover both. The Seaview Deli and the North Bank Hotel are also donating 10% from the refreshments to the charity. Look out for exotics, Strelitzia, I hope that's right, and lemons, artichoke and wisteria, Cineas alba among the highlights.
And this is the generous stores. The Southern Co-op is celebrating their successful store funding in 2020 when £5,610 was raised on the Isle of Wight. To show Southern Co-op's appreciation to the local causes, the total was rounded up to a more than 6,300, so each cause receives a minimum of £500. The funding will go to local causes including RSPCA, Isle of Wight, Sophie Rolfe Trust Kissy Puppy, Suicide Prevention and Intervention, the Isle of Wight Bus and Coast Museum, Wessex Council Trust and West Wight Nursery. Fundraising activities ranged from colouring competitions, treasure hunts to guess the sweets in a jar. Stores that took part were the Cooperative Food in Bembridge, Carisbrook, Mill Hill in Cowes, Alfton Road and Avenue Road in Freshwater, Rookley West Street in Ryde, Sundowns Avenue Road and Shanklands Regency Street.
Support Stephen's Skydive for Keza. An East Cowes teenager is preparing to jump from a plane in aid of the Isle of Wight Keza's kindness. Steve Call 18 has been volunteering with the organisation since 2017. Now, to mark his milestone birthday, he's planning something more adventurous. Hoping to raise vital funds, Stephen plans to complete a skydive in August. Any money raised will go to the organisation set up in memory of Keza Flux Edmonds, who died in 2016. Keza's mum, Nikki, co-runs Keza's Kindness. She says the plan is to put a new piece of equipment into Bumblebee Park, opposite Queensgate Foundry Primary in East Cowes, where Keza was a pupil. The goal is to raise £10,000. Support Stephen's Skydive fundraiser via his...
And we now move on to additional news, and the first one of these is the rental crisis. Post-pandemic changes in the Isle of Wight's housing market has led to a crisis within the rental sector. A combination of rising house prices, demand for second homes and landlords setting up while the market is buoyant means it is increasingly difficult for island families to buy or rent. Letting agents are reporting that any property that comes onto the rental market is a rare commodity and will gather 30 applicants within the hour. Tenants are fearful of not finding accommodation when their notice period is up, and others are not upsiding as their family grows because they're too worried about giving up their existing home and not finding another. One couple told the county press that they might have to consider moving off the island because they simply can't find anywhere to rent. Their landlord decided to sell and they were given their notice. The property sold for $30,000 above the asking price. Such was the demand for it. The man's father wrote to the CP, "I believe there is a desperate situation building here on the island. The house owner found out that house prices have risen a lot and put the property on the market, giving them notice to move out. Having searched through a number of island letting agents, they had been informed that every rental property has a queue of 20 people waiting. Despite being in work, they cannot find anywhere to live. If they move off the island, does this mean services will lose staff because they've nowhere to live?" A Ventnor family found themselves in a worrying situation when their landlord put their flat up for sale. The tenant said, "The housing situation is pretty bad at the moment, with so many people looking for a property. We haven't found anywhere yet, as there are hardly any properties available. Our current home is sold subject to completion. We are in a 2-bedroomed and really need a 3-bedroomed room, but 3-bed family homes are certainly lacking. I believe the COVID situation has exacerbated this situation, as so many landlords are selling up, as so many people are wanting to move here now they're able to work from home. People from the mainland are so desperate to live here, they offer way over the asking price. The second homes and airbubs don't help either. I would say there is definitely a housing crisis which needs to be addressed. There should be an adequate amount of housing available to local residents who have lived and worked here for years."
Changes to scrutiny. The proof of the pudding will be in the eating, was the New Alliances Group's response to Conservative leader Steve Hastings' pledge to collaboratively engage with the new administration. Councillor Hastings said this week he would appoint members of a shadow cabinet and wouldn't oppose policy for the sake of it, and as previously said, the Conservatives would be robust and powerful in opposition. However, leader of the council and of the Alliance Group, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox, said, "The proof of the pudding will be in the eating. We have inherited a situation where the previous Conservative council operated its own form of lockdown in terms of access to cabinet members and information, so it is not surprising we are somewhat sceptical about Councillor Hastings' statement. On the evening of our victory, we changed the previous system, whereby the administration was in charge of scrutiny and effectively marking their own homework, and have done this as a first step in restoring transparency, enabling the council to restore its credibility. We will be going on to review the many other obstructive policies and practices the previous administration imposed on this council. While we, as a new administration, have to prove ourselves in office, it is also very much for the Conservatives to prove if they can change their spots. We and the public will be watching their behaviour closely." Councillor P.C. Wilcox said it was up to Councillor Hastings to decide how to structure his shadow cabinet, but this would not entitle his councillors to any greater access to information. She said he and his team will have the same level of access to information and the cabinet the Conservatives deemed fit and appropriate. Our immediate action to revert scrutiny back to opposition with the support of reverse proportionality has already gone further than the Conservatives ever did to provide an open and transparent culture.
And this is an article by Lucy Morgan, Hope for under 40s still waiting for jab. More doses of non-Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccines will be available on the Isle of Wight by the middle of June at the latest, the island's MP has told the county press. Bob Seeley said it means there will soon be better availability for islanders aged under 40 to book jabs here. Currently, there is a bottleneck of age groups being called by the government for their vaccine appointments, but nowhere to get one after government safety advice changed. Scores of islanders are reporting that only mainline appointments are available via the official National Health Service booking options. The Oxford AstraZeneca jab is no longer advised for those aged 18 to 39, but is the only vaccine being handed out at the Isle of Wight's main injection hubs. Mr. Seeley says that is about to change, and he's also revealed that GPs will also be branching out to use alternatives. There are 3 available: the Pfizer BioNTech version, which is much more difficult to store, the Moderna jab, approved in the UK but not currently being given out on the island, and the single-dose Johnson & Johnson, which has only just been approved. On the Isle of Wight, there has been frustration because in some areas people in their 20s have been called by their GPs and have been able to get their vaccinations, while in other parts of the island, people in their late 30s are still waiting. A 37-year-old Ventnor woman got a text calling her forward in May, but has only been offered slots in Portsmouth and Southampton. Her brother, who is 3 years younger and lives in Cowes, has already been offered his jab via his doctor. A 37-year-old from the Bay Area said there was a major flaw in the system. She said, "Lots of people, including me, have given up hope and are travelling to the mainland for an appointment. I've been trying the National Health Service website and 119, as advised, continuously for weeks." Mr. Seeley said, "The health teams are aware that there is a problem. If you want to go to the mainland for a vaccination appointment, you can choose to do this, but if not, you don't need to." He said if people can wait a week or so, there will be other options and better availability.
Breaking into charity warehouse. The leading figure at Island Charity Mountbatten has described a break-in at its warehouse as devastating. Callous thieves targeted Mountbatten last Friday night, making off with electrical items, and had cut wires to their phones and internet, which caused havoc at its care facility in Newport. The charity's till and computer equipment was stolen, using a wooden pallet to reach the warehouse window, which they smashed and gained entry through. Not only were expensive items taken, the thieves cut all its wires, which left staff without internet connection and no phone lines working on Saturday. Nigel Hartley, Mountbatten's chief executive, said, "Everyone at Mountbatten is devastated by this break-in. At a time when we have had to shut for most of the year due to COVID, and when our shops are just getting back on their feet. We have also worked hard over the last year to ensure everyone who needs our care has continued to have access to it. Events like this not only sadden us, but each and every one of us takes it personally and wonders how anyone could do such a thing. Every penny matters, particularly at the moment. The island public also reacted to the break-in with dismay, sadness and utter condemnation on social media. Police are investigating."
Joy as treasured pottery saved. Villagers who rallied to the aid of a pottery are celebrating after development plans were withdrawn. Tregear Pottery on High Street, Knighton, now reopened after COVID and illness forced a temporary closure, feared for its future when the landlord sought planning consent for a bungalow on the site. The much-loved pottery has been in Knighton since 2012, yet was described in planning documents as a former butcher's shop. Among dozens of objections sent to planners were several expressing incredulity that internationally renowned pottery Neil Tregear's place at the heart of the village merited such little acknowledgement. One such commentator was Knighton's resident Molly Attrell, herself a renowned potter, who said it is disingenuous to describe the premises as a former butcher's shop, when it is in fact currently occupied by a viable, flourishing pottery business. Prior to this, it was for a short time a deli, so has not been a butcher's shop for many years. I'm totally opposed to the change of use in this case. Former Knighton resident Jonathan Young pointed out that 3 images showing external views of the premises used on the planning statement have been edited to remove the words Tregear Pottery from above the shop windows. Now the Isle of Wight Council has confirmed that the applicant's agent had asked for the application to be withdrawn. Mr. Tregear is recovering from major surgery, but last week volunteers helped co-owner Mrs. Catherine Tregear to reopen in time for the bank holiday. Family friends John Below-Good, who has been leading the volunteer and campaigning effect, said, "We are delighted to hear that a sensible solution has been reached. We wish Neil a speedy recovery." The volunteers have told me how privileged they feel to be able to help out at such a renowned pottery. Mrs. Tregear added, "We would like to thank John B.G. and the local community, in particular the current volunteers at the pottery, who have offered us such support during Neil's illness. Negotiations to extend the shop and the work lease are now expected to continue. The pottery opening hours for now are 10 to 1, Tuesday to Saturday."
No more prayers at council meetings. A councillor's 16-year campaign to end prayers at meetings of the Isle of Wight Council has finally succeeded after he became chair. The issue was due to be a motion on the agenda of the first full council meeting last Wednesday, but with Councillor Jeff Brodie becoming chair, it was at his discretion whether or not the practice would continue. Under the previous chair, George Cameron, prayers were said by Archdeacon the Venerable Peter Leonard. Councillor Brodie has been fighting the discriminatory prayers since he became an Isle of Wight councillor in 2005, and has previously left meetings after being criticised for not attending prayers by former council leader Andy Sutton. Before the meeting, Councillor Brodie said he just wanted it to stop. After being voted in as chairman of the full council in a 20 to 18 vote against Councillor Ray Redrup, Councillor Brodie withdrew his motion. As an atheist, Councillor Brodie said he would not be appointing anyone to conduct any faith business before the full council. He said, "I'm a non-believer. You will have to respect that. If people want to take prayers or have periods of contemplation before full council, I'm more than happy to see that, but it will not be part of the formal part of the agenda. That is who I am, and the majority of people accept that."
And this one is from Bonchurch Lifesavers. Generous donations from Bonchurch residents will go towards installing vital defibrillators on all 4 geographical tiers of the village. New life-saving equipment will be fitted at Leeson Road, halfway up Bonchurch Chute, at the Bonchurch Inn, and outside the garage opposite the village pond. 1 defibrillator has already been installed at the beach. Fundraiser Deborah Percy has been instrumental in organising the project. She is now appealing for a final push to get the defibrillators funded and installed, and donations can be made to St Boniface PCC, sort code 404509, account number 81428039, and please write defibrillator in the transaction description. Cheques can be made payable to St Boniface PCC via the Peacock Vane, Bonchurch, PO 38 1RJ.
Plans for light-up billboard opposed. Local Democracy reporter Louise Hill looked at some of the Isle of Wight planning applications. Sandown residents are objecting to new light-up signs in the Broadway, fearing they will create unacceptable light pollution. Currently, 2 advertising billboards stand on the corner Parsonage Road and the Broadway, but plans have now been submitted to change that. Applicant Wildstone Estates is asking the Isle of Wight Council for permission to upgrade one of the billboards to an internally illuminated digital poster standing at the same level as the existing ones, 1.3 metres off the ground and 3 metres high and 6 metres wide. Documents say the sign, primarily facing traffic heading down the Broadway towards the roundabout and the garage, will be made of lightweight LED panels showing a static illumination instead of a changing picture. The proposed new illuminated billboard could have a brightness of 600 CD/M2. A neighbour opposite objected, saying it would be too bright coming through their windows at night. One objector argued the Isle of Wight Council has installed new street lamps which reduce light pollution, only to then consider this application. They said the light pollution from this sign in a wholly residential area is unacceptable. On an industrial estate is one thing, but there are houses all around it. Another said drivers should be focusing on the road, not being distracted by what is intended to be eye-catching. Island Roads, however, said the new sign will not pose any more of a distraction than the existing signage, and with no highway safety concerned, it deemed the proposal acceptable. Plans show the other billboard facing straight across the road would be removed. To view the plans, 21/01005/ADV, visit the Council's planning portal. Comments will be accepted until June the 21st.
Will Shalfleet's new homes go to locals? Asked Louise Hill. Plans to build 70 houses in Shalfleet were presented to the parish council last month, but met with mixed reactions. The proposed development, comprised of 2, 3 and 4 bed houses, would be built on land behind the recently completed Burt Close. Presenting the latest phase of development to Shalfleet Parish Council, Simon Jacobs explained the site had been in his family for nearly 30 years after his parents bought Shalfleet Manor. He said, "We are looking to create a legacy so that long-standing Shalfleet families, their children and grandchildren, can continue to live, work and bring up their families in Shalfleet." Talking through the scheme, planning agent Andrew Neal said the development could see 70 predominantly semi-detached properties, 46 for open market and 24 affordable built. The affordable houses would be broken down into 16 rented and 8 shared ownership houses. Isle of Wight Councillor Peter Spink for Freshwater North and Yarmouth argued, despite what developers said, most houses would not be for the benefit of local people, as they would not be able to afford the open market properties. He said, "If you are going to be selling the vast majority of these houses on the open market, with no control over whether they go to islanders, it is not really as you said. providing home for local people. It is providing a small number of total proportion of the local people. Mr. Jacobs said they're not luxury homes, potentially costing £200,000 to £300,000, not over £500,000. The application is not set in stone, and the development team said they would take the feedback from the parish council into consideration. A public meeting is going to be held on June the 22nd at Shelfleet Village Hall by the development with more detailed plans.
School improves despite lockdown. Oakfield Primary School in Ryde has continued to improve despite the COVID pandemic, according to Ofsted inspectors. In a remote monitoring visitor in early March, inspectors looked at the way the schools had been coping during the pandemic and how it had continued to grow from its last requires improvement rating given in January 2020. Ofsted found leaders of the school were taking effective action to provide children's education. At the time of the inspection, 14% of pupils were being educated on site, with the rest learning remotely. The inspector saw the school's remote education provisions had evolved and strengthened over time. Working with parents and carers to understand technology needs, reducing potential barriers and ensuring pupils had the access needed. Pupils were learning the same thing regardless of whether they were in school or at home, as leaders minimise the impact of the pandemic on pupils. The needs of vulnerable and SEND pupils were prioritised and benefited from their usual level of support. Inspectors found necessary improvements have been made to the curriculum, but these were more advanced in some subjects than others, being stronger in maths, English, science and history and geography. Further action, however, should be taken to ensure the knowledge and content pupils need to know. It's explicit in teachers' planning, and governors were monitoring leaders' actions to improve the quality of the curriculum more after the pandemic. Oakfield teacher Vicky Reader said parents have been amazing in their support of learning from home under really difficult circumstances. The whole team has shown such resilience and selflessness, sense of duty throughout these challenging times. I'm so proud of them all and feel honoured to lead such an inclusive school where challenge and high expectations go hand in hand, with making learning fun, providing a strong outdoor education and valuing the whole child.
And with that, everybody, Imelda wishes you a very happy weekend. Hope the weather holds well, and goodbye.
Yeah, and goodbye from Paul.
BBC's In Touch magazine follows. In this special programme, we examine the role genetics plays in both the inheritance of sight loss and its future treatment. We hear about the latest breakdown reported in the journal Nature Medicine, in which the vision of a completely blind man was partly restored using light-sensing proteins first found in algae. He was treated with a type of therapy called optogenetics, which uses the proteins to control cells at the back of his eye. And we discuss the merits of gene testing with the Chief Executive of Retina UK about how genetic testings can help people with inherited sight loss make future choices about their lives.
This week's Scaffolding News follows the In Touch programme. The Scaffolding News follows Ventnor area, Ventnor Heritage Museum, Spring Hill, Lucknow House, Wallace Road, 4 Church Street, 28A Pier Street, and a skip outside South Bank Park Avenue.
And Ryde area, 7 Hamilton House, 4 South Street, 13 Esplanade, Rose Court, George Street, 51 George Street, Ward Associates 39 Union Street, 30 Nelson Street and Jack's 75 Union Street.
And Seaview area, the Anchorage Seafield Road.
Newport area, 17 High Street, 11 Orchard Street, the Old Mill, St Cross Lane, Guildhall High Street, H. Samuel 35 High Street, Guildhall High Street, Watson Bull and Taylor 31 High Street, 118 to 19 Old Grammar School, St James Street, and Halifax High Street, and a skip will be at 15 Worsley Road.
And Cowes area, 31 Mill Hill Road, 72 High Street, Toby's of Cowes 9 High Street, 5 Birmingham Road, and a skip at 72 High Street.
And in the Yarmouth area, South Ford 1 Tennyson Road, Grove Cottage, St James's Street, and a skip will be on the Rocks, Bridge Road.
And finally, freshwater area is Royal Standard 15 School Green Road.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight we're devoting the whole of the programme to a discussion about genetic testing and its role for people who are blind or partially sighted as the result of an inherited condition. I should say right from the start, don't expect a full-on course on genetics. It's a very complex subject and we'd probably have to take over Radio 4 for a month to do it. What we want to concentrate on is, as I say, genetic testing, what it can tell you about your own condition and the likelihood of you or other members of your family inheriting it or passing it on. It's something all of us with a congenital eye condition have wondered about, but our understanding and awareness of the importance of genetics varies quite dramatically. 2 years ago, we interviewed Retina UK, a charity which works with people with inherited sight loss, who were doing a survey about this. The results of that found 43% of people weren't aware of genetic testing, or that they were aware of it but thought it wasn't available to them. That led to Retina UK setting up a new part of its website dedicated to genetics and helping people with some of the big decisions around genetic testing. Well, Tina Houlihan is the Chief Executive of Retina UK. Were you surprised by that result? Only slightly less than half of the people that you talked to not even aware of testing?
A lot of what our Insight survey gave us in 2019 was surprising, considering that this group of conditions are all genetic and all inherited. I think what is important to add is that in addition to a lot of people not being aware that this service is available for them, that we estimated as few as 15% of our community can actually name the gene associated with their sight loss. So we knew there was an area that we really needed to work on and help inform the community about genetic testing and counselling.
OK, let's do some simple science then before we bring in our other two guests, because there are, I think, 3 basic types of inheritance when it comes to eye conditions. Can you explain those as simply as possible, just so we know what we're talking about?
Yes, so there are several different types of inheritance patterns. There are autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive, which means you either need one copy or both copies of that particular gene to have a defect on it. There's also X-linked conditions as well, which are a different type of pattern. I think moving forward, we have to understand that this group of conditions is infinitely complicated. There are at least 250 different variants of genetic diagnosis, and we know that that's going to grow. So we know it's an extremely complex area, and it is something that we're hoping that we can break down into helpful, simple information for the community to know exactly where they stand with their genetic condition.
And just to take one of the assumptions that's often made, or that you often hear about these kind of conditions, conditions, which is that they're sex or gender related. They aren't all, are they? But can you just say something about that, just so that we've got a basic handle on what the variations are?
I think that with X-linked retinitis pigmentosa, there is a lean towards the female being the carrier of that defect and a male offspring actually having the symptoms of that. I think that for further information on your familial patterns, going through the process of genetic diagnosis and genetic counselling will help you have an independent understanding of your individual circumstance.
OK, let's bring it down to real people and what it means to them. We can speak now to Martin Hills and Bhavini Makwana, both of whom are living with the inherited condition retinitis pigmentosa. Bhavini, if I can start with you, just tell us a bit about your own situation and what part inherited sight loss plays in your family.
I've been registered with retinitis pigmentosa at the age of 17, and if I'm honest, it was a complete shock. So nobody in my family has been diagnosed with sight loss. We hadn't even heard of the condition when I was diagnosed. So up until now, 23 years later, I'm still the only one with retinitis pigmentosa in my family. So right now, I only have 1% remaining in one eye, so I can only see light and dark.
OK. Martin, what about you? What's your family situation?
Right, a little bit different to Bhavini really, Peter, because there is RP in our family structure. In fact, now there are 4 generations of it, 2 below me, all with some indication of RP, and some of the cousins, etc., aren't. So in my particular case, it's a 50-50 chance every time. But fortunately, I've got a very slow deteriorating sight loss, and I've been able to have a fulfilling career, and I've still got a pretty reasonable amount of central vision, but I'm afraid my periphery is absolutely rubbish.
So, Bhavini, how did you come, therefore, to take a genetic test? What made you do it, since you said you've had this for, what, 23 years, or known about it for 23 years?
Yeah, so about 4 or 5 years ago, at my annual Morpheus Eye Hospital appointment, it was mentioned to me. I had a number of questions that just kept building up over the years that simply couldn't be answered. Questions like, how have I got this? You know, why me? What's it going to mean for my daughters? I've got 2 young girls. So it was offered and explained to me what genetic testing is, and of course what genetic counselling is. And I was asked the question whether I would like to take part. And yeah, learning how it could support and answer those questions, I definitely took part.
Because it sounds as if you didn't get any genetic testing before deciding to have your children.
No, definitely not.
So it just wasn't a kind of thing that even occurred.
No.
And Martin, what was your motivation for this, given that you say that you haven't, as it were, got it that badly and it hasn't occurred clearly in your family? So what made you want to get tested?
Really, I was officially diagnosed in 2003, and let's face it, I don't think genetic testing was around then. I only really started to get interested when I started volunteering for Retina UK, where I learnt an awful lot more about it, and decided to go for it and see where I could go with it, particularly for the benefit of our wider family, because I think it matters.
So that was, you really want people in the family to know what the issues are, because in a way it was a bit late for you, if I can put that rather crudely, wasn't it?
Yes, that's quite true. But in fact, they haven't discovered the problem gene for us yet.
How difficult was it to get the test, Bhavini, for you?
To be honest, I think it was quite easy. I spoke to a genetic counsellor, and there and then my blood samples were taken. Because I don't live in the same town as my parents, it was posted out to them. They had to then carry out their blood tests and have it sent back. So that was approximately 6 to 8 weeks. It was then kind of, waiting for the results, which took about nearly 3 years.
3 years, which is a long time to wait for the information.
It is.
And what's it actually told you, and what difference has it made to how you're thinking about it, and presumably what you're telling your daughters?
Yeah, I mean, they've been able to identify exactly what gene it is that's causing my retinitis pigmentosa. And it is one of the rarest ones. So when I was told about 4 years ago now. I was one in a family of 10 that had been diagnosed with this one. But what it means is that as long as my daughter's potential partners get tested and they're not carriers, it's very unlikely that RP will progress further down the family tree.
So that is a question in a way you're telling, and this is where it gets tricky, doesn't it? In human terms, that's where your daughters will have to say to partners, do you mind getting tested? Because this is an issue. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but to be honest, they perfectly understand why. They've attended so many things with me with Retina UK, and they sometimes tell me this is the information and this is what they've got to do. So they completely understand it.
Martin, what about you? It won't have made any difference to the decisions perhaps that you make, but what's been the result of you undergoing this testing? What do you know that you didn't know before?
Well, the thing I don't know is which my problem gene is at the moment, but there's some exciting developments going on, and very recently a paper had been produced which appears to indicate there is a potential investigation going on for our family. So I'm pretty positive as to how things are going to develop for the younger generations of my family's structure.
But that's the frustration in a way, that even though you've both got this information, it's not always given you, particularly perhaps in your case, Martin, it hasn't yet told you what you need to know.
That's correct, Peter, but the one thing I would point out, I also had genetic counselling, and the counsellor did actually warned me that could easily happen, so I was prepared for it, which sort of deadened the blow a little bit.
Let me bring Tina back. We've touched on some of the tricky implications, the things that you have to ask, and there is genetic counselling available as well as testing. Just tell us about that.
So I think that it's arguably as important to have counselling as well as a genetic test. I think it all builds to the information that the family have about their condition, how that condition might progress, why their and their family may have been affected, as well as the precise diagnosis. Counselling can offer all sorts of information on inheritance patterns, which I know both Martin and Bhavini have touched upon, and provide really clear understanding of the risks to children, grandchildren and broader families.
Now, we've not talked yet about things like, restoring some sight, or at least slowing down or even reversing deterioration. We feel we walk a bit of a tightrope on In Touch, try to balance giving people good scientific information but not raising false hopes. But the fact is there is a lot of exciting work going on in this field involving things like gene replacement therapy and stem cell surgery, but it's necessarily slow. Only a few days ago, we heard about a technique which claims to have restored some sight to a man in France with retinitis pigmentosa. The technique involves using a protein which enables algae to swim towards light. It's claimed that its use can restore light sensitivity to the eye. Well, our health and science correspondent, James Gallagher, reports.
The man from Brittany in France was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa 40 years ago. The condition leads to the death of light-sensing rods and cones in the retina, and in this case, complete blindness. The researchers turned to optogenetics for a solution. It's new to medicine, but has long been a cornerstone of basic neuroscience. Essentially, it uses light to control the activity of individual nerve cells. It's based on the proteins that microscopic algae use to swim towards the light. The instructions for these proteins were given to the surviving cells in the man's retina, and a special pair of goggles was used to convert natural light into the right wavelength to activate them. Dr. Jose Alain Sahel from the Institute of Vision in Paris said the patient first noticed a pedestrian crossing.
This patient initially, I think, was a bit frustrated because it took a long time between the injection and the time he started to see something. But when he started to report spontaneously that he was able to see the white stripes to come across the street, you can imagine that he was very excited. Everyone was excited.
He can now grab and count objects on a table. This is far from perfect sight, but the difference between no and limited vision can still be life-changing. The researchers say their findings show the potential of optogenetics to restore sight, and the same technology is also being investigated in conditions such as Parkinson's and to see if it can aid recovery after a stroke.
James Gallagher. Tina Houlihan, I imagine that this was news to you as well as to us. I mean, what's your reaction, not just to this, but these kinds of stories?
Well, first of all, Peter, I'd really like to thank you and the team for such a sensible approach to reporting what are very exciting progression in the scientific world, but they have to be taken in a realistic view. So it's really exciting, the optogenetics approach. This is the first in-human test. That means there's a long way to go. There's a lot more testing to be done. And this approach isn't dependent on a genetic diagnosis. So it's very exciting stuff. But if I could manage that with a touch of sensibility and realism, there are a few things about this particular treatment that need to be taken into account. First of all, it restores vision to improve independent mobility, not vision as we understand it, so watching TV, lots of details and all of that sort of thing. The other thing is that it was reported that it took several months after the treatment before this individual actually saw those first signs of vision. So lots of really encouraging signs there. But as always at Retina UK, we take that excitement and we look what it means realistically for the near future for the community. So very exciting. Things are going in the right direction. But a certain amount of pragmatism needs to be used in terms of when this is going to be readily available and what the long-term efficacy on many people is.
And Martin and Bhavini, how do you react when you hear stories like this? Martin first.
With caution.
I think that's all you need to say, really. Bhavina, what about you?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think sometimes it gives a false sense of hope to a lot of people, and it's just how you manage those expectations afterwards. So yeah, with caution is definitely the right word.
Tina, what does the future hold for genetic testing in terms of visual impairment, and where can it go, and where are the best hopes, do you think, for future progress?
Right, so a few questions in there, Peter. So firstly, I think that genetic testing is a very important part for this particular community because the conditions are genetically based. So as well as all of the advantages and benefits to not only having the knowledge but going through the process, it's really important because in effect, it's a group of ultra rare conditions bound by one set of symptoms, that we have as many people in the process and in the programme that might be available to participate in the increasing number of clinical trials and being able to access those treatments as they become available. So it is exciting times. There has been a lot of breakthroughs in the last few years, most notably the Luxturna a treatment which was approved for NHS funding, and the first patients have been through that process. And we as an organisation, as a community, have learned so much about how to help that process. There's very exciting progress in stem cells, and as you've read this week, in optogenetics. But as we always say to the community, we keep them as fully informed as we can so they can make decisions about their future and their families, as both Bhavini and Martin very efficiently said, with caution, hopeful caution.
Right. Just one last quick question to Martin and Bhavini. Martin, what would you say to people who are reluctant to seek testing? I mean, some people feel they, in a way, they would rather kind of leave it in the lap of the gods and not take a risk. And they'd point out that there are people who lead very happy and fulfilled lives when they've got retinitis pigmentosa and other congenital diseases.
I think that's a very important point. I think it's horses for courses. There's a certain degree of enthusiasm from some people and caution and maybe not wanting to know. So, and within a family structure, that can vary as well. So things have to be taken very sensitively, I think.
Bhavini, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, people have the right to this service, should they need it, should they want questions answering. For me, it definitely helped. I learnt all those questions about why me, why am I the only one? I got my answers. So if people do want to know, it's there, it's available to them, but just being cautious that you may get an inclusive result. It's not guaranteed.
We'll have to leave it there, but thank you all, Bhavini Makwana, Martin Hills and Tina Houlihan. We'd, of course, also welcome your response to this. Would you be more likely to take a genetic test after what you've just heard? If not, why not? And if you already have, what changes for you as a result? What was different? You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Do go to our In Touch website where you can find this and many previous episodes of In Touch. And that's it for this week. From me, Peter Wight, producer Simon Hoban and studio manager Mike Smith, goodbye.